And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio. This is episode number 319 of the Assembly Call, and it is episode number 28 of Assembly Call Radio, recorded on the evening of Thursday, May 18th, 2017. I'm Jared Morris, your host for Assembly Call Radio, where each Friday we break down the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. And once the season starts, you can catch us immediately after every IU basketball game on the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Watch us live at assemblycall.com. And if you can't catch one of our shows live, you can always catch up with our podcast. Just search for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts, and you will find us. Alrighty. Well, let's begin this week's show how we always begin, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moments. And, this was not a very jam-packed week of news for Indiana basketball. Obviously, the big news was that Robert Johnson announced that he is coming back for his senior season. At least that's kind of what we thought. There were reports from John Rothstein and later confirmed by Inside the Hall that Robert was going to come back. At least that's what his dad said. But then Robert later tweeted out that he was still in the draft process. So no one's quite sure if that was just Robert maybe kind of wanting to take back control of the narrative and announce it on his own time, or if he still really is doing that. Everyone that I've talked to seems to think that, it's basically a done deal that Robert is coming back and that will ultimately be the decision. And so we kind of broke that down. I kind of broke that down in last week's banner moment. It seems obviously now like it is even more likely than it was last week that Robert will be coming back. So we'll still wait final official notice from the man himself once Robert actually announces it, but it certainly seems like he'll be coming back. And we'll talk about here in a little bit when we get back into a little bit further into our first segment why that's so important. But obviously having a 3-year starter, your returning leading scorer back at guard in the Big Ten, with a new coach in his first season, you don't need me to tell you why that's important. So obviously the big news of the week, and hopefully that proves true moving forward, that Robert will remain a Hoosier. Alrighty, let me now introduce my esteemed co-hosts. To my left, ladies and gentlemen, we have the president of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, a world-renowned bracketologist, and one of the fastest lawnmowers ever, considering that he just got done mowing his lawn right before he came on the show. He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your Bottoms line from the past week in IU basketball?
Well, we here at the Robert Johnson Fan Club, we're certainly excited to hear the potential news from the inimitable John Rothstein that Rojo would be back. And as you said, it sounds like from everybody's perspective that would be true. And so, assuming that is true, I'm excited to see the combination of the news about Blackman leaving and Robert potentially, hopefully, whatever we want to say, coming back, I think become really interesting for him because he was a guy who got stuck a bit last year area where he wasn't the primary ball handler. He wasn't really initiating the offense. He seemed kind of miscast as the true point guard, but also couldn't really be the two guard playing off the ball all the time because of Blackman. So now seems like the opportunity to be more of the latter has opened up a bit with the news recently, and I'm certainly excited to see how he'll do in that role. I think it will be a challenge for him, will be interesting, but I think for a guy who we talked about so often last year, struggling to find clarity on what his role actually was, it actually feels like that may have become more clear as we figured out, what the offseason has held for the roster.
Absolutely. All righty. And now, to my right, we have the undisputed winner of last week's 3-on-3 draft with the remaining IU roster, a columnist.
Not true. Disputed.
You guys, they have a win. I earned it, man.
I just want to thank the two people who voted for Team C on Twitter. There were like 100 and some votes cast, and a couple of you voted for Team C. I just want to say that I appreciate you all.
How many voted for me before you finish my intro?
A lot did, but that's only because people are underrating the potential impact of Curtis Jones and Clifton Moore. Now back to the intro. And to my right, we have the undisputed winner of last week's 3-on-3 draft with the remaining IU roster, a columnist for thebiglead.com, and ladies and gentlemen, a man whose stomach is full of tacos. He ate before the show tonight. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant from the past week in IU basketball that has nothing to do with the 3-on-3 draft?
Okay, well, if we're gonna, I mean, you just totally undercut me. No, first of all, the tacos were fantastic, so I'm very happy right now from having eaten before the show, which rarely gets to happen. I think it is the Rojo news, of course. I know we've all touched on that now, so it's kind of repetitive, but I do think that it seems like the winds are pushing in that direction and he's going to return. And I think that is huge for him. I think it's huge not only for him as a player, but it's huge for Archie Miller, the staff, the rest of the team, because I think both sets can make each other better. I think Rojo coming back will make the team better. And I think that coming back and playing for Archie Miller will make Robert Johnson better. So I think that that's certainly the biggest news. It is interesting that I don't know about you guys, but it's almost like I keep waiting for some drama to happen, and it's just not. And I think that that's a great thing, but at the same time, it's kind of a strange feeling to not have, news popping up every other day. It just seems like everything's going how it's supposed to. Which, yeah, it's almost unsettling after the last few years that things are just doing okay. And, so it does feel weird. But I think that's a positive, and I think you're starting to see you're starting to see the program sort of settle into a pattern that's going to be for the rest of the offseason. You see guys, on campus working out, involved, seeming like they are, a part of the program as opposed to just guys who were there working out. It seems like they're starting to really develop something. So I think that's exciting, and I think it's great that we're not constantly waiting for the next batch of bad news to drop, which it seems like we have over the last few years.
Well, we're always just so ready for a coaching change to be the harbinger for just turmoil and craziness. And, this one kind of went how a normal coaching change is supposed to. Unfortunately, Archie Miller is about as measured and mature and prepared as anybody could possibly be for this kind of role. And so I think that's a big reason why. So we'll talk about that as we move forward. We will, of course, dive into Q&A because you all sent us questions via Twitter. I'm very excited to answer them. We've got a great group of questions this week. In our third segment, we are going to talk about, and this is a question, I think, Ryan, you posed this question. We were talking about potential topics, but what kind of elite program should Indiana be? I think we all want Indiana to become an elite program, and there's lots of different models out there. Should Indiana, kind of follow Kentucky's model? Should they follow Duke's model, Kansas's model? There's a lot of different models. Or should Indiana kind of blaze their own trail? And so we're going to talk about that. And then in our fourth segment, there's a pretty interesting national recruiting trend that we've started to notice. And something actually happened this year that hadn't happened in a long, long time. And we're going to get to that coming up in our fourth segment. All of that and more on this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio. First, real quick, a word about this week's sponsor, SeatGeek. The NBA playoffs obviously in full swing now. The Eastern Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals are going, and SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every game. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like being there in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have SeatGeek on my phone, the app, and it's by far the easiest way that I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats, as I did twice this year using SeatGeek to go to Mavs games and see Yogi play. I'm hoping that next year I'll get to go to Mavs games and maybe see Thomas and OG play, or Thomas or OG play. Hoping the Mavs pick up one of those guys, so we will see. SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever, and it doesn't end with sports. SeatGeek also has plenty of concert, comedy, and theater tickets available too. Best of all, our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code ASSEMBLY today, ASSEMBLY. That's promo code ASSEMBLY for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips talking about the biggest news in IU basketball this week. And again, there wasn't much, but let's linger on the big story, Robert Johnson, for just a little bit longer. I mean, Andy, when you look at a decision like this, what do you kind of think the ramifications are? Like, do you think Robert coming back is potentially the difference between an NCAA tournament team and an NIT team, a top half of the Big Ten finish and not getting to that point? Do you think it's that important, what his role could mean on next year's team?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. If you look at the losses in combination with one another, I mean, I think obviously, independent of anything else, him not coming back, if Blackman comes back and Robert Johnson leaves, if those two flip around, then you still probably feel okay about the season. I don't know that it changes your outlook a great deal, but now that Blackman is gone, you look at it that way. If Johnson was gone, your backcourt would essentially be some combination of Newkirk, Devontae Green, Al Durham, and Curtis Jones, and that obviously is a very inexperienced group for one, and two, a very inconsistent group. And while Johnson certainly had his ups and downs last year, I think it's at least a guy who, from the backcourt position, you have a good idea of what you're going to be able, what you're going to get from him on most nights. And so I think that really would, kind of have become an area where now you're not very deep in the backcourt. And we've also talked about, last week that they're not very deep, in terms of true post players. So you've just got a bunch of wing guys that you're trying to figure out how to cobble things together with. And so I think that really becomes important from a stability, from an experience standpoint, and also a guy who's really proven himself at times to be really strong defensively. And I think he's a guy who, that experience, knowing the players, is going to be able to buy into that system and do extremely well. So I think on a lot of fronts, it becomes a big deal, more so in light of the other guys who left, maybe than it would be just viewed individually, him leaving.
Ryan, I feel like if James had come back, he would have been one of the odds-on favorites to probably lead the conference in scoring, just given what we've seen. He clearly would have been Indiana's leading scorer on a team that may struggle for offense. So I think if he had come back, it would have been big. But could you make the argument that Robert coming back is even more important, given the kind of identity that Archie Miller wants to establish, a more defensive, gritty, tough-minded identity, which when Robert is playing his best, for instance, toward the end of his sophomore season, and certainly at times early in his junior season, he is that tough, gritty defender, along with a guy that can give you some offense as well. And maybe it's a little bit unfair to try and, rank, either one of those two guys, and it's a moot point because James is going. But do you think Robert could have even more of an impact coming back because of what he can do on both ends?
I don't think there's any question. I think he's far more important than Blackman was. And Blackman was a scorer, but we often talked about how, he scored a lot of points, but he was giving up just as much at the other end. And, in games where he was either guarded well enough to not be able to get his shot or be able to get his offense going, or where he was just off, he was actually hurting the team on the court. I mean, he was a good rebounder, but other than that, he didn't offer much. So I think that Robert is a two-way player, and he plays very good defense. And I think that he lost that at some point of the season last year a little bit, maybe because his offense was struggling so much, especially early in the Big Ten season. So I think that maybe he just lost focus defensively because, one end of the floor can affect the other. But he's a two-way player, and he's a guy who can do a lot of things on both ends. He's a guy who can impact the game when he's not scoring. And those guys are always important. And I think that this year, I think he'll have to be a more consistent scorer for this team. But he'll, he won't be able to go through the kind of lulls he went through offensively as a junior. But at the same time, he's going to give you stuff on the defensive end. And I think he fits what Archie Miller wants to do with that toughness and defensive identity much better than Blackman did.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think him coming back raises expectations for IU, but also raises expectations for himself. I mean, a lot is really going to be expected from him, as Ryan said, either from a scoring perspective, defensively, leadership, all those kinds of things. I think it really is incumbent upon him to step things up and be that consistent player in the backcourt, because he's the one that, based on you looked on the roster, is the most likely to be able to provide some of the same stability that ideally Deron Davis, Juwan Morgan, Colin Hartman would be able to provide in the front court.
Yeah, no, good point. All righty, let's move on now to segment number 2. We got a bunch of questions. You submitted them via Twitter. We're excited to answer them. Several of them deal with Robert Johnson, so we will do that next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. All righty. Excellent.
Give me 1 second. Be right there.
Hey, everybody on YouTube. Nice to see y'all. If this is your first time joining us here for a simulcast, we record it in 4 different segments, so you get to see some of our kind of side talk and planning for the next segment here in between. So questions. Andy, did you get a chance to look at the questions? Oh, you're muted, I think. 14. You're still muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Oh,
I
right.
Yeah, I did get a chance to glance through. So
Okay. So
Will Reddick submitted a question, huh?
Yeah.
He used to work for Rumors and Rants.
I thought the name sounded familiar.
Yeah, I really wanted to. Never mind. I'm not going to say that because we're live.
We are live. That's always important to remember. Is
I'll
are
tell
live.
you guys off air.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Already.
All right. Stick around, ladies and gentlemen, for the off-air portion of the assembly call coming up later, where I tell Ryan that I hit stop broadcast. But then
Hey guys, I'm sending you something in the chat. I'm sending you something in the chat that you are not allowed to repeat.
That's probably for the best that we don't.
Yeah, do not. That's just
okay. All righty. Now somehow, Andy, we have to summon the strength here to record another segment after that bombshell.
Yeah. Yeah. Once we let that out, Will Reddick may be submitting a different question for next week's show.
Okay.
Guys, seriously.
All right. Okay, so let's start with Tom's question. Jeff's question, I think we can answer pretty quickly because I think it's pretty clear who the leaders and captains are going to be. It's going to be Robert and Colin, and then I think, and maybe Morgan kind of steps up in there too.
Yeah.
But the biggest challenge is a good question. We've kind of touched on it before, but it's still a good question. So let's start with Tom. Let's go to Will next. We can do Jeff real quick, then we'll reset and go to some of the other ones because they can kind of be hit quickly too.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, I'll start it. You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here talking IU Hoops with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and it's time for Q&A. You all submitted some questions on Twitter, and we are excited to answer them. And so let's start with Tom's question because it kind of segues us from the last segment. Who runs the point next year? Now that we're kind of assuming even more strongly than we were last week that Robert Johnson is going to be back. And Andy, you mentioned, kind of the struggles that he had as a primary ball handler. So who is the point? And this is, from Tom's question, do you think Devontae Green should be given a chance, or will Newkirk try to be the lead guard again? Andy, how do you project it happening? And if you were, kind of the coach and, without seeing obviously any of the insights from workouts and that kind of thing, who would you like to see get the ball to start the season?
I guess I'll answer the second way first. I mean, I'd kind of like to see Devontae Green. I think that, one, you're kind of looking to the future a little bit. You really need to see what you have in him, because I think the other thing, as you start looking at recruiting and things like that, you've got to figure out what you're going to do at that position, not only this year, but moving forward, and how hard you really need to go after a point guard, or how many you need to go after. And so I think it becomes somewhat important to kind of figure that out. And I really view those guys pretty similarly. Green, I think, has a stated, emphasis on defense, and some of the comments he made even when he signed with IU. I think that'll play well with Archie. I think he's the, kind of, gritty, I guess, for lack of a better word, type of guy that I think Archie will like. So I guess I would go that direction. To me, it's close enough that if you're gonna, break a what's close to a tie, I go with the younger guy in that scenario that you can start to groom for the next couple of years. That being said, I don't know that that's what Archie will do and how much he values the experience of a guy like Newkirk. I don't really know. He certainly played well toward the end of the year, and if he keeps that momentum, another year removed from the microfracture surgery, maybe he works his way into there. I don't know that there's a bad choice. I think Devontae would be my choice. Hard to project a little bit what Archie may do from my perspective.
Brian?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see Newkirk start the season at the point. I don't know who ends the season at the point. So, I think that you're going to see Newkirk as the guy when they open the season. But I think Green will get a lot of minutes, and I think that that's going to be key because I think Green is really good, and he showed a lot last year. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think you're going to see Newkirk open the season, senior leader, and you'll see Green get his minutes. But I think Green will be given the opportunity to earn those minutes with his play on the floor. I don't think it'll be something where he's going to earn them in the preseason. I think he's going to have to earn them once the season starts, and see how the team plays in the new system with each guy sort of being the ball handler. But I think it's definitely between Newkirk and Green, and I wouldn't be surprised if Green overtakes him, but I think Newkirk's going to open the season as the guy.
I think the interesting thing is we talked about this a lot with Juwan Morgan in the past, or in terms of, does he play better coming off the bench and things like that? do they experiment with some different things and find that, can Newkirk be more of an energy guy that really provides something off the bench, or is that a role that Green is better suited for? Because I think either guy whoever doesn't win that is going to be one of the first guys off the bench, and maybe use some of the exhibition season and some of the other non-conference games to figure out, role wise, who's able to really excel in that kind of off the bench role, and that may make the decision a little bit for him as well.
I feel like we should have a special donor level this season where people, if they donate enough, they can see our in-show chat.
No, never. Special I just would stop talking.
By the way, whenever you're watching the show, if you see someone just like kind of smile and struggle to speak, and then the other two people are leaning back in their chair, you know that someone has just had a really good burn inside of the chat. And we do try and distract each other sometimes in there too, and it's quite fun.
So professional. It's the most professional show on the radio.
Wildly unprofessional. That's neither here nor there.
Yes. Okay. So Jeff's question, he says, with the departure of Thomas Bryant, OG Anunoby, James Blackman Jr., and possibly Robert Johnson, although we don't think that'll be the case, who do you think will step into the team leader captain role next season? And I think we can hit this pretty quickly, because I think obviously if Robert comes back, he's going to be that guy. Colin Hartman is clearly going to be that guy. And I think just by virtue of kind of being seniors and being older guys, an older guy who will play a lot of minutes, I think Josh Newkirk will be that guy. And then Juwan Morgan being the lone junior would be another one. But I think those, and really because of, I think, the role he'll play, I would add Morgan with Johnson and Colin Hartman as your three main leaders next year. Do you guys disagree with that at all?
Well, I think you're right that Newkirk will be in there. I don't know who's going to be the actual captains. I mean, a lot of that is that really depends on the dynamic of the team and the dynamic of the coaches and who they feel comfortable with. But as far as just leadership, I think you're right. It'll be Hartman for sure. I don't think there's any question about that. I think Robert Johnson will be in there, and I think Newkirk will be a part of that sort of leadership group. And I agree with Morgan as well. I think that he's got the personality and the attitude to be a leader. But who the actual captains are going to be, that's hard to know. I assume it'll be two of the three seniors that we mentioned, but I don't know for sure which way they're going to go with it. But I think that you've got that sort of four-guy leadership group that's going to have a lot to say about what goes on with this team.
And the thing that'll be interesting, your best player leads whether he wants to lead or not. And if Deron Davis is going to be as big a focal point as it sounded like Archie Miller wants to make him, and as big as he's going to need to be, being kind of the lone big guy down there, he's going to be leading whether he wants to or not. And so his example needs to be a good one. So I don't think he'll be, a captain, anything like that, but his example is still going to be very important. Andy, did you want to hop in on that one?
Yeah, just real quick. I think the one thing we start looking down the roster where you've got some senior guys, I think having multiple seniors is something that who are going to play major roles has been something that kind of ebbed and flowed during the Crean era with just different guys, leaving here and there. And so you've got between Johnson and Hartman in particular, you've got guys who have a lot of game experience. I think that helps. I think those guys almost by virtue of that alone step into that role. But, Newkirk has been with the program. This will be the third year if you count the year he sat out. And so you got some guys that really have some, kind of put some time in with the program. I think that becomes important and maybe a luxury that hasn't always been there in recent years. So I think that'll be helpful. And I think, the leader will likely emerge from that, quartet of guys that you mentioned.
You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Brian Phillips answering the questions that you submitted from Twitter. And there's a really funny one, by the way, that we're going to end with. But before we get to that, let's go now to Will's question. So what do you see as Archie's biggest challenge in his first year? Also, do you think there is any pressure on him to make the dance? I will attack the last part of that question first. I think yes on two fronts. I mean, look, is there pressure like he's going to lose his job if he doesn't make the NCAA tournament? No, there's clearly none of that. I think Indiana fans are going to be patient, not expecting miracles early on. But I do think, just the excitement level, the enthusiasm level, and, if Robert Johnson comes back, I think we all think there's enough talent there to make the tournament that, barring some kind of unforeseen circumstance during the season, everyone will be a little bit disappointed. It's Indiana. We want to get back to expecting to not only make the tournament every year, but make a run every year. So I think in that sense, there's a little bit of pressure, but I don't think anyone will put more pressure on Archie Miller to make the NCAA tournament than Archie Miller will. I mean, I think he is, has a standard and he expects to win. And I think even he's probably realistic enough to know he probably doesn't have a national championship team, but I don't think he's entering this season trying to lower the expectations either inside or outside the locker room. So I think when you look at pressure, I think he'll put as much pressure on himself as anybody will. But Ryan, when you look at what his biggest challenge will be in his first year, he's already overcome some of them, having a full roster of guys who were, in terms of the recruits and the guys who were here last year, starting to make some inroads on the recruiting trail. He's doing well with some of those, but when it comes to the season, what will be his biggest challenge?
Well, I think it's just going to be implementing a system. I think that's always the hardest part, and getting guys to play a different way, because let's face it, the majority of guys who are going to be playing have not played his system before, and we're playing a different college basketball system last year or for the last few years. So getting guys out of old habits, getting them, to sort of refocus and change the way they do things.
To not rely on echo signs.
Yeah, exactly. It goes from top to bottom too. It's not just games. It's not just practice. It's workout habits. It's study habits. It's everything. He will do things a different way than the previous coach, and I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is just getting guys out of those bad habits, getting them into the good habits. And I think also just developing an identity for the team, that's going to be wildly different than the last one. It's not going to be a high up-tempo offensive team that doesn't play defense. That's just not what it's going to be. There might be an up-tempo offense, and there might be some defensive struggles, but that's not going to be the ideal that he's going for. And so it's just getting guys to buy in. I think it looks like most of the guys have bought into it, but it's a matter of not now taking the next step and getting them to actually play how he wants them to play. I think that's the most important thing he's got going forward. And, and again, though, that's the same for every coach that takes over a program. So it's not like this is special to Archie. This is, something that every coach that takes over a new program has to go through. And, the way they succeed in the first year is often indicative of how well they've done that.
Andy, obviously a big challenge Archie will face is earning your approval for his substitution choices and patterns. But in addition to that, what is another challenge that he will face in his first year?
I really think the recruiting stuff is a big one. I think he's certainly done everything that you'd want somebody to do at this point. But I do think one of the challenges will be able to get that breakthrough, whether that's from an Indiana kid or just as he starts to assemble his first real class. I mean, obviously this year he was able to keep the guys who had already committed to IU. Weren't really, with the roster situation, much opportunity to do anything more than that. I think that was really as much as you could really possibly ask. And, now it's time for the work that they've put in, and they are playing catch up a little bit to hopefully pay dividends. And I think some of the challenges will be trying to figure out, how much emphasis do you really put on getting, an Indiana kid or two in the class of 2018? Because I think it was the Peaks podcast I was listening to this week where they talked about, some of those guys haven't played all that well in some of the offseason things. And it would be easy for him to move away from them to some different guys. And so what's that really look like? Do you take some of those guys just because you need that breakthrough? You feel like you want to, check that box of getting those guys. I think that becomes an interesting challenge for him, where there's reasons to say you might move away from those guys. But there's other reasons that he's kind of stated from a philosophy standpoint that suggests maybe he would stay in on them, try to get some of those guys who might be there for a few years and be able to be foundational, Indiana guys from Indiana. That whole debate, I guess, of whether people will be happy or not happy, depending on where these kids come from, I think it's going to be, a big challenge, and to see how he handles. I think it'll be interesting because I'm not sure there's a right answer at this point to do that. And recruiting is all somewhat subjective until you see the guys actually play. So I think that's the one that I'm really interested to see how it plays out. I don't know that I have an opinion on how I want it to play out, but I think certainly a challenge given how that started, just the overall kind of tenor of that part of the discussion.
Andy, this is the hot take era of sports media. You're not allowed to host a radio show and not have an opinion. In fact, you have to have a strong opinion, whether it's backed by anything substantial or not. So let's go.
I'll work on it.
Give us your hot take.
Or you have to be LeVar Ball and have neither.
Dang it! What did we say about saying his name on the show? Never again.
Is there like a jar to put a dollar into, or
yeah, or how about 495, and then you can buy a pair of those stupid shoes. Anyway, Yeah, by the way, Musa Jallow and Robert Finney, two of the guys that you were kind of referencing that haven't played as well during this recent period, I think, as some people were expecting. So it'll be interesting to see how they play moving forward. Okay, we have time for one more question in this segment. This is a really interesting question. I really look forward to getting your guys' thoughts on this. This is from Nate Kent. So he says, Tom Crean challenges Archie Miller to a duel to the death. Archie gets the choice of weapons. What does Archie choose and who wins? I think this is pretty simple. Archie chooses defensive efficiency rating and turnover percentage and kills Crean instantly. And it's a nice clean. There's no blood or anything. What do you guys say?
Andy?
I will say he chooses a basketball because for those who watched video of Crean shooting in Maui, one would question his ability to accurately hit Archie with the ball at any point. So I think you go basketball. I don't know if you can kill someone in a free throw shooting contest, but if you could, I believe Archie could do it. And if nothing else, accuracy with shooting the ball at shooting or throwing the ball at the other person. I feel like if you watch the video of that, Archie would have a clear advantage in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm going with the M1A Abrams tank at close range. And I think Archie wins. Accuracy is a big deal, and as Andy said, he played, so clearly he's got that hand-eye thing going on with the lining something up and pressing the trigger. So I see, M1A Abrams tank at close range, and Archie comes out victorious.
Or
It's
we could
possible.
just summon our inner anchorman, our inner Brick Tamblyn, and give him a trident that he could that Archie could use. So
Yeah, that would be that. I mean, my second choice was katana sword, just because that'd be fun.
Right. It's highly possible that those were the two worst minutes in the history of the assembly call. What is this, episode 319?
You
Those
are
may
really
have been-
overselling us. You are really overselling us.
May have been the two worst minutes ever, but thank you nonetheless for your question,
They're the
Nate.
two worst today. They might not have even been the two worst this month. Let's be honest.
Yes. Okay. So coming up, we're going to take a look around the college basketball landscape and see if we can identify a program that is the blueprint for what we want IU basketball to be. Should be fun. That is next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Okay. That was 15 minutes and 33 seconds.
You should apologize to our audience for asking that question.
Huge missed opportunity for us to bash your draft, though. It's the worst 2 minutes of the show that we've had recently.
Yeah, that was.
I don't know.
Bad,
like that question seemed good at the time, and then we got into it, and it ended up just becoming a Crean bash session. And I kind of felt bad about it. So that was probably a poor choice.
You got to side with the new coach, not the old one.
Well, no, I know you do, but I just, whatever. Okay, so next segment. Ryan, do you want to introduce this since it was kind of your idea?
No, you do it. You're the guy. Everyone expects it from you.
Okay. So do you guys have your answers or your ideal for what you want?
Well, how do we want to approach it? Do you want to? I mean, I see you have like some of these examples down here. I don't know if you wanted to like kind of talk through those examples or if you'd rather.
I think if we talk through all of the examples, it's gonna. Yeah, I would do it real quick, like be like Kentucky Duke, where it's basically, like you have it listed. Don't list all the things from Michigan State. Just be like constantly.
No, I'm listing Michigan State because they're my choice.
Right.
I listed all that there to defend them.
But I guess maybe touch on the different types of programs, like, maybe quickly, like what do we, and then pick one, and then we each pick one.
Yeah.
Because I think you should probably throw like Wisconsin in there, because it's a different type of program. What are you? So you're picking Michigan State,
and we can kind of just round robin it, like start naming off some programs too, and just kind of
you're picking Michigan State.
I'm going Michigan State. I
Who
like.
Who are you going with, Andy?
I'm inclined to pick Kansas.
That's a very good one,
despite the lack of tournament success. But
I know who I'm picking.
Who are you picking?
UCLA.
Yes, exactly. That is my. Yeah. I like getting to the I like getting to the Steve 16 every year. I would go. I'm going with
Rutgers.
If we take the academic scandal out of it, I'm going with North Carolina.
Yeah, but can you really take the academic scandal out of it?
Apparently, didn't really touch the basketball team. They say. But
I wonder if they'd have any incentive to protect the basketball program at all.
Well, that's true. But I will put that caveat in there. I'm like, you can't have that. But they return players. They're consistently good. I mean, they're not going to have a lottery pick this year unless Justin Jackson blows up. But they just won the national title, and the year before they were runners up.
I think
they're recruiting
might be another interesting one that's not listed here.
Yeah. All right.
But if you're taking Michigan State, I'll take a different one. So I'll take North Carolina.
Was Michigan State going to be yours?
It was that or North Carolina. So.
Someone in the YouTube chat said Assembly Call After Dark would choose Louisville, which is an excellent point. An excellent point.
I think that's different than the academic scandal. That is like you're enticing recruits with that. It's different, I think, than, not that either is good. Don't get me wrong, folks. I know I'm going to get hate mail about this, but I don't know. I would go with that. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. I think we're good. Right. Yeah, it should be.
Let's hop into this. By the way, we're at about 30 minutes. So we can take 13, 14 minutes for this segment because our last segment, it won't take that long.
What is the trend that you're referring to?
Ryan wrote about it on the Big Lead. About what was the first time since when, Ryan? That
2010.
No top 5 recruit.
The 2010 is as far back as 24/7's rankings ago, and it's the first time since 2010, since those started, that a top 5 recruit didn't choose North Carolina, Duke, or Kentucky. None of the top 5 recruits chose one of those 3 schools.
Oh, interesting.
One of them chose Western Kentucky, which is crazy.
Yes, number 5 chose Western Kentucky, not Kentucky.
All right, so we'll hop.
Sure, everything's above board there. That doesn't seem weird at all.
Guy from Louisville or from Louisiana, I mean.
Yeah.
Too. So didn't really. It's not like it's in his backyard, and he just really loves it.
Who's there now? Rick Stansbury, is he coaching there now?
Didn't we give a kid a tractor? We gave a kid a tractor.
I think Rick Stansbury, the guy used to be at Mississippi State. I want to say. I don't know.
The best team money can buy. I love that movie. Okay.
All right.
Hopefully everybody gets those references. If you don't, then rent Blue Chips. Actually, who rents anymore? Stream Blue Chips.
Go to Blockbuster.
Go rent Blue Chips. All right, let's do this.
Make sure you get it on VHS too. You don't want to.
Dude, even DVD is an outdated reference now.
Well, that's also true, but I just wanted to show my own age there.
Yeah.
I have plenty of, and if you find a VHS player, I have plenty of old IU games that we could watch on those that I now have nothing that would actually play them. So
you can digitize on.
That's right. Send them to Galen. He'll know what to do. Okay. All right. I'm going to hit start. Let's do this. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Remember to go to assemblycall.com/join to activate your free membership. You will get our weekly 6-banner Saturday news roundup plus our world-renowned post-game analysis emails the morning after every IU game. You do have to be a member to get them, and the URL, again, is assemblycall.com/join. I am Jared Morris, talking IU basketball with my co-hosts on the Assembly Call, Andy Bottoms, as well as Ryan Phillips. Remember, you can join us after every IU basketball game over at assemblycall.com and every Friday right here for Assembly Call Radio. All right, so this should be a fun topic. And Ryan, this is one that you introduced in one of our weekly email chains as we're planning what we're going to discuss on this show, which is what kind of elite program do we want Indiana to be? Because we all want Indiana to be an elite program, but there's a lot of different ways to do it, a lot of different models out there, right? You've got the Kentucky Duke model, which is very much, obviously Kentucky has been built on one and dones for a while, but Duke has kind of now entered that, to where it seems like they have 2 or 3, one and dones going pro every year. And so you've got that model, which has obviously been successful for them. You've got Kansas, which has had some one and dones. You think about Josh Jackson and Andrew Wiggins, but certainly not as many as Kentucky or Duke. And just the utter unrelenting consistency that they have had, in terms of conference play, even though their NCAA tournament success hasn't maybe been quite what you would want. And then just looking in our own conference, you have Michigan State, which has made 6 Final Fours in 20 seasons, does have the 1 title, and they, have obviously had a one and done guy here and there, but really much more built on guys who stay 2 or 3 years. They play that consistently tough schedule, always a respected threat when they get to the tournament. And then, you even have a school like Wisconsin that, very much built on 3 or 4 year guys, a defensive style, built on a lot of homegrown talent, but very, very consistent in terms of, being in the top 4 in the Big Ten. And of late, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've certainly done more in the NCAA tournament than they had in the past. And then others, like there's, obviously the Villanovas of the world. North Carolina is another one that of late has been built more on, not as much NBA talent, but guys staying a little bit longer, building that camaraderie of the team. And obviously they are the reigning national champions. So there are a lot of choices out there. I'm curious, what would you guys like to see Indiana under Archie Miller be modeled after? And this is, feel free to be pie in the sky here. Everything seems possible now. Archie still hasn't lost his first game, so let's enjoy these moments while we have them. And while everything seems possible, let's decide what we would like to see actually happen. Andy, as you kind of look out across the college basketball landscape, of the most successful programs, which one would you like to see Indiana emulate the most?
I guess I would lean toward Kansas. I mean, you've got I don't even know how many years it is in a row now that they won the Big 12, but they're, perennially, even that seems like a lot to ask. Their streak is unbelievable, quite frankly, to be able to dominate a major league in the way that they have.
I think Greg Graham was still playing at IU.
That's possible. There we go. Awesome. Everybody check off your cards. Greg Graham reference. We got it. And so I do think, their consistency there, you've seen guys like Frank Mason this year, Devontae Green's coming back for his senior year. You've got that mix of some guys who may not be as heralded that come in, but really buy into what the program is about, and really carve out a nice spot in the history of a storied program. But you've also got the Andrew Wiggins and Josh Jacksons who are there, who kind of infuse that elite talent and go there. You've got guys like Perry Ellis who are there, so really catering to a more elderly population of fans and students.
Who was in Greg Graham's recruiting class, actually.
Absolutely was. Absolutely
was in Abe Lincoln's recruiting class.
That's possible.
Dude, Perry Ellis being old jokes is like the lowest of low-hanging fruit in college basketball.
Hey, whatever it takes.
They still work for me.
Whatever it takes. And I think the knock on them would be the tournament success. But I think consistently performing that well year in and year out, you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to have a high seed. Things will at some point break your way. The tournament is obviously matchups, a little bit of luck, a whole lot of things are needed to be able to win. But I think winning at the level that they have has consistently put them in a position where you're ideally getting a favorable draw. You've got a good seed. You're playing close to home. And I think all those kinds of things matter. And then they feed back into being able to kind of keep that population of solid recruits and players coming in year over year.
Ryan, what about you? We know that you won't compromise your morals and choose Wisconsin, Duke, or UCLA. So never. Outside of those, who would you like
never
to see
happening.
Indiana emulate?
Never happening. Honestly, I was looking at this, and I think because he hasn't been implicated in the academic scandal, I'm giving him a pass here. Normally, that would be a disqualifier for me, obviously. But Roy Williams' program at North Carolina is consistently excellent. I know they had that huge academic scandal, but he has largely been absolved of it. Unless something else comes out that has not come out yet, I would give him a pass there for now, even though my inclination is to not do that. But if you're looking at success and the fact that he has not been implicated, his second year there, they won a championship. These are their NCAA tournament years. Second round, championship, second round, Elite Eight, Final Four, championship, NIT, Elite Eight, second round, Sweet 16, national championship game runner-up, and national championship. That's 3 titles since he's been there. A lot of Final Fours, a lot of Elite Eights. And, of course, in there are also conference championships, regular season and tournament championships. He's had one-and-done guys, but lately, as you mentioned, they've largely been built on guys who stick around a few years, guys like Joel Berry, Marcus Page, Justin Jackson. They're not going to have a lottery pick this year unless Justin Jackson's stock raises really big, towards the end. They had a couple seniors this year. It's a team that just they consistently have very good players who aren't in a hurry to leave and jump to the NBA, who actually buy in and who improve over time. And I think that's a big deal, is that these guys, come in as talented guys, but decide to stay and improve as opposed to just jump at the first chance to do so. So clearly they enjoy it there. They enjoy playing there, and they buy into the program. And so those are things that I would like to see in my program, in a program that I, rooted for, is guys that are there for a while, that unpack their bags, that want to play for a while. And on top of that, you're having that high level success of a top program.
You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are going through and looking at the elite programs around the college basketball landscape and trying to decide which one we would like Indiana under Archie Miller to most be like. If everything goes well and Indiana gets back to that elite status, what would we most enjoy that looking like? Andy chose Kansas, Ryan chose North Carolina, and I'm going to side with Michigan State. And for a lot of the reasons that Ryan sided with North Carolina, and I think a lot of Indiana fans will go, kind of in the Kansas, North Carolina, Michigan State realm, just in terms of how the teams are constructed and how they play on the court, to where you're going to get the occasional one and done. But, Ryan, like you said, for the most part, you've got guys who unpack their bags, who stay 2, 3, 4 years, and it really allows you as fans to embrace them and get to know them and to enjoy watching them grow and develop from one year to the next. And so I think obviously Michigan State does that. A lot of their guys stay 2, 3, 4 years. They get the occasional one and done, but that's not what the program is built on. It's built on a guy like Draymond Green, who was a 3 or 4 star recruit, but really developed, goes from sitting the bench to becoming, an All-American type player. And I like seeing that. I like watching guys grow like that. Michigan State has been a team that, they compete for any 5-star guy pretty much in the Midwest, but they're also always getting the best, 4-star and some really good, developmental 3-star guys in state. If there's a good player in Michigan, then they're going to be involved there. And I think that's what Indiana needs to do with their in-state recruiting. And I just like the confidence with which the Michigan State program conducts itself. They schedule tough. They don't worry about early season losses. Obviously, when you're a coach, with the stature of Tom Izzo, you can do that. But I like that they play that tough schedule. It prepares them. They take some of those early bruises, but they're always ready for the tournament. And then no matter what Michigan State is seeded and no matter what has happened during the season, you get to the NCAA tournament and everybody's, finding a way to put them in their Final Four because of the trust that you have in Izzo and just the confidence that you have in the program. The toughness that they can overcome difficult situations and that they can thrive in that kind of environment with the quick turnarounds. And that is what I would like to see Indiana be. And so I think, look, if Indiana's Kansas, North Carolina, any of those, and maybe being so close to Michigan State and admiring them for so long has me a little bit biased, but I just really, really appreciate what the Michigan State program is. And I would love to see Indiana get back to that and basically take the torch from Tom Izzo and own the Big Ten for the next couple of decades like Michigan State has done while Izzo is there. Any thoughts, Andy, on North Carolina or Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a couple things kind of stand out of the choices that we all made. One of those you touched on, where there's an element of having guys that are one and dones, but there's also an element of having some stability, consistent levels of success is another. And that's the thing with Carolina. Somebody, I think it was Gary Parrish, wrote something up last year that talked about, in the same time period, since Roy Williams had been at North Carolina, the consistency and how they had performed in the league compared to what even Duke had done over that same time period had been, pretty heavily slanted toward, North Carolina. And so, I think that's important. And I think having those guys be able to stick around and see that success, it's been talked about so much, the tradition and the leadership being handed off from class to class at Michigan State. I think, many of IU's struggles as they've gone through, it's kind of lacked that continuity from class to class and year to year. So you see a class of guys like Watford and Hulls and, Oladipo and Zeller all leave. There was really nobody there to kind of keep that momentum going. And that's been one of the big complaints about the Crean era. Even when Yogi and that group of guys left, even though some of them hadn't been there for very long, there just didn't feel like a natural kind of passing of the torch from one group to the other. And I think all of the teams that we picked seem to have some of that. Now, perhaps that's because we're biased to what we've, seen in recent years and maybe not liked. or struggled with. But I thought that was kind of interesting that everybody took that approach as opposed to the, you could win big with some of these one and dones, but none of us really went that route. And I would be curious to see if, a lot of fans would feel the same way.
Ryan, let me pose this question to you. Brian mentioned this over in the chat on YouTube. Would Indiana fans accept the Wisconsin model? Limited NBA talent, but very competitive. Obviously, they've changed the narrative over the last few years with their tournament success. Do you think that would be acceptable, or are Indiana fans wanting another level beyond what Wisconsin has even gotten to?
I think they'd want another level. I don't know. I think it would be. I think they would accept it. But I don't think that they'd be happy with it. I think there would be complaining about it.
It would feel like something was unfulfilled.
Yeah, I would say yes. I think that an Indiana team or an Indiana fan would rather win one championship in 10 years than go to 10 straight Sweet 16s. And win one championship and be okay.
Rings for every finger.
Yeah, I mean, I really do. I think that's the way that Indiana judges itself by championships, and so I think that's what they would prefer. I'm not sure how much I agree with that. I mean, obviously, I want to win a championship as bad as anybody, but I think consistent success also has its value as well, and I think that eventually Wisconsin will probably break through and maybe not win a title, but have a consistent run of higher success. But right now I feel like they're just kind of the team that is every year in the top four. They had that one special year with Kaminsky and Decker and, all the other guys and made a run to the final. But I don't think that that's going to be a year in, year out thing for them.
I think you need look no further than what people thought about, hiring Tony Bennett from Virginia to know what people would feel about that. I mean, I think it's obviously he's got Wisconsin ties, so there's a similar model there. But there were a lot of people who were like, I don't know if I like the way they play, and yeah, they have consistent success, but the again, style of play is not that great. Haven't had a ton of tournament success. Wisconsin's obviously had more, but I think that to me was kind of the measuring stick for what people would feel about that. And obviously, Ryan, wants to win a championship as much as anyone because he picked a program that is in the midst of academic scandal to model things after. So hey,
yeah. No, I
knew that already.
Hey, you know what? Got to get a little dirty. It's
oh boy, this is Assembly Call After Dark starting early again. Alrighty, so there's an interesting recruiting trend happening. Something happened for the first time since 2010. We're going to reveal what that is, talk about what it means, and what it suggests for the future. Coming up on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. All right. That was 14 minutes and 50 seconds. So we are at 4:44:37.
So 5:23. No, 5:13. 47 or 37?
37.
All right, 5:23 then.
I don't do the math, so
we have 5:23 left. So
hopefully Megan's watching, so she can make fun of us. She can make fun of us attempt to do math.
Yeah. So at 4:47 is when we got to be out. 4:47. So Ryan, I'll let you introduce this, and then we can riff on it for a little bit.
Okay, hold on.
I love lots of good activity in the chat tonight over on YouTube, which is awesome to see. Let's just see. Brian Tonsoni, by the way, picked Michigan State or Kansas. So
those are great picks. I can't argue with your guys' picks. I would love to.
BGTE said staying close to the Miller family, he'd go with Arizona, where they compete, get major recruits along with some 3 or 4 year guys, and regularly contend and win the Pac-12. Which I agree. I mean, I think Arizona is going to eventually not, get through and get to a Final Four or win a title. They just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Arizona is a great model because I mean they've won 3 out of the last 4 Pac-12s. They're always in the top 5, top 10. So and you just got to give yourself enough chances.
They have underachieved a little bit the last couple of years, though. But I agree. It's that's a program that's ready to break through.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah, I'd have no issues with that. Andy, what were you going to say? Sorry.
So hang on. I'm trying to look up the stuff about this. The whole top.
Yeah, and Sam said, why has no one said Indiana? And his point was compare Indiana to Indiana and strive to get back to what it used to be. I mean, look, everybody, if you can sign me up for Indiana between 1973 and 1993, again, I'm there. I'm in. 3 national titles, all those Big Ten titles, we'll do that. This discussion was more about, programs as they are right now today. Yeah, because, we could go back to, UCLA and say that, we want to have a sugar daddy like Sam Gilbert who can get us 8 straight titles or whatever it was.
Yeah.
No offense to John Wooden.
None taken, I'm sure.
No offense.
I'm pretty sure he can't hear you.
Oh man. Okay. Andy, did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, I did. I was just trying to find I was looking at the rankings that Ryan was looking at when he talked about this. So
it's 24/7. You got to go to their actual rankings, not their composite.
Not the composite. That's where I was getting thrown off. I was like Trevon Duvall was 5th in the one I was looking at, but I got it. I'm with you. I'm good.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so let's do this. I will introduce this and then kick it over to you for the big reveal, Ryan, since the radio listeners will be sitting on the edge of their seat after that titillating tease that we just did.
Nice alliteration.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, ready? Here we go.
Yep.
You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris, talking IU basketball with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, wrapping up another episode of Assembly Call Radio. And with our final segment, Ryan, let's talk about a topic that you wrote about for the Big Lead, a pretty interesting national recruiting note. Something happened for the first time since 2010. What was that?
Well, for the first time since 2010, which is the entire history of the website 24/7's recruiting rankings, none of the top 5 players picked Kentucky, Duke, or North Carolina. And no one picked Kansas either. When you look at the top 5 recruits this year, Michael Porter Jr. went to Missouri. Mohamed Bamba picked Texas. Colin Sexton picked Alabama. DeAndre Ayton picked Arizona. And Mitchell Robinson picked Western Kentucky. So you have top recruits not picking the traditional powers for the first time in a long time. And I was kind of examining why would kids do that and possibly go for lesser exposure. But then you look at guys like Ben Simmons going to LSU. You look at Markelle Fultz going to Washington. Both of those guys are likely. Fultz is likely to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Simmons was the number 1 pick in the draft. It didn't hurt them to go play lesser competition. So I'm wondering if this is going to be a trend of guys going to schools that aren't necessarily traditional basketball powers, sticking around for a year and then bolting for the NBA, not having to face the strain of night in, night out in the ACC, Big Ten, whatever, and being able to kind of come out unscathed. What do you guys think? I mean, do you think that's a potential reason, or do you think guys are just picking random schools for fun?
Well, and to be fair, I mean, Duke and Kentucky still had pretty good recruiting classes.
Oh yeah,
I think they still had 8 of the top
the elite.
Yeah. Don't cry for those teams. They did well, but you're looking at guys who could potentially be the top of the lottery, and none of them are going to go to those schools, and that's odd. We're used to seeing guys from those schools taken at the top of the lottery.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if the guys. I mean, now it could be a bit of an anomaly. There's always that.
Sure.
I wonder if some of the top guys don't necessarily want the pressure of having to deliver a national title at those top schools, or their year there being seen as a failure. Now, I mean, Fultz and and Simmons didn't even make the tournament, so their seasons were kind of seen as a failure in some senses too, even though it didn't hurt them. But I wonder if that's part of it. I don't know.
Well, and then you also look at guys like Troy Brown, who ranked number 11, went to Oregon. Lonnie Walker, number 13, is going to Miami. Brandon McCoy, number 15, is going to UNLV. You've got guys going to Mississippi State, Oregon State. I mean, these are 5-star guys going to Mississippi State, Oregon State, just other places. You've got guys in the top 50 going to St. Louis and Providence. So it is an interesting trend. Where it looks, guys are just eschewing the top schools to go different places, and it's just you're right. It could completely be an anomaly.
Yeah, the Porter one is interesting. I mean, he would have gone wherever his dad was going to be an assistant. I mean, that's why he was going to go to Washington. His dad was there. He goes to Missouri and ends up going there. So that one's a little bit odd. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of it is interesting. The Western Kentucky one obviously stands out at that point. Rick Stansbury, I believe, is the coach there. He used to be at Mississippi State, and I think he's actually got another decent recruit or somebody that transferred into there. So they may end up having a relatively decent team compared to what you would expect for them. But yeah, it's definitely odd. And some guys though in those scenarios, want to, kind of carve out something and really be a guy. It could be cases where I'm a guy who wants to really put this program on the map. So, a Colin Sexton or somebody who's going to Alabama to play for Avery Johnson, that could be a factor as you get different coaches in. Here's a guy with NBA experience that I want to go and play for, play the same position. Or is it, hey, I want to go put this, this school on the map from a basketball perspective, as opposed to, wandering in and just being another 5-star guy someplace else. I think you can look at it a bunch of different ways. I think it's hard to gauge without really kind of knowing the kids and what their mindset is, which I think is pretty varied as you go down different groups of players here.
Or maybe someone gave a kid a tractor. Just
who knows?
Just
we didn't give him a car. We gave him a fully loaded
Lexus. All right, we got to wrap. That'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live simulcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to activate your free Assembly Call membership. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers. And wrap. 5:25. Well done, gentlemen.
Yeah, as always.
Very nice. Let me just catch up with some of these last messages. That's cool. It was nice seeing people in the YouTube chat. By the way, let me know what you guys think of the YouTube chat, because we might try doing more of that this season so we don't have to pay for Cover It Live. I mean, I like Cover It Live, and it's cool having it behind the member wall, but if we can get more activity and there's not a lot of drive-by nonsense, which is what I was worried about with the chats, then I'm okay with it. So let me know what your thoughts are.
Cover It Live is
I'm
so expensive.
Cover It Live?
Yeah.
I know.
We were going to buy it for the site, and then we were like, no.
Wow. So Assembly Call can afford it.
Well, don't talk to USA Today about money right now. Just don't. Ever.
Although it does hinder our salaries. So it is a strain on.
Clearly I like salaries. Clearly I like my salary.
Ryan, I should mention that we're still live.
Yeah, so no, I know. I can see the little yellow thing up in the corner. Don't worry, I'm not going to say anything untoward. Well, not too untoward. Let's see. So, are we doing all of us next week again, or what do we want to do?
Let's see what happens in the next few days. Because if there's no news, then the three of us again. Maybe we get Zach on. Maybe for some of these shows we try and do two person or find some guests. So let's see what happens.
We did Alex once.
Alex has been on.
Yeah. Okay.
Should get Zach on sometime this offseason.
Zach
Osterman.
Okay. Well, there's two Zachs now.
Oh, so. Sorry. Yeah. Zach McCrite. He's
Morris. Zach Morris. That's who we need to get.
Also, would be interesting to have on.
Obviously,
he'd have to come in by phone, and it would be like this big.
Oh, there we are.
And he could also say time out and stop the show, and then give an aside to the audience.
God, I wish I could do that. That'd be so great. Just get up, go eat, come back. Oh. All right, guys. I am gonna go.
All right, gentlemen. All right. See y'all. Thank you all for
good.
watching. We'll be here next week.
Guys.
We'll talk to you then.
All right. See you.